Now, it's one of those days that I'm not going to be going riding at all, but I thought, wow, what a great opportunity. I'll share a little tip or a couple little tips that I think you'll find really useful if you like to ride a clean motorcycle. And none of these cost a lot of money. They're meant as just little tips or little things you can do that make your life a little bit easier when you want to have a nice clean motorcycle. Now, I could start with one real easy one here. I always save my old towels, and you can buy these at garage sales. Usually they give them to you. The step one is just make sure there's no something rough or glue on there. And if you let me show this up close, 1 second. Towels usually have an edge. They usually have a seamed edge, just like a carpet. And my work table is made of padded, just so I'm not on a hard surface. But always on the edge of it, there's some kind of little surface like this that if you use a scissor, you can cut this out and in essence make a strip. And I'll try to share a couple little things that I think you'll find real interesting. At least this is the way I do it, and I'm sure other people have better ways, but this is a way you can have a cleaner motorcycle in very little time. And all these tricks and tips, well, you know, if you do anything long enough, it's my opinion anyway, that you do something long enough, you find all the shortcuts and all the easy ways of doing it. And my good friend George Venturini put it in perspective one day. He was teaching me how to mix concrete, and he says, you don't have to find ways to make it more difficult. Mixing concrete is hard enough. And keeping a motorcycle in nicely polished condition, it's hard enough. This will make it a little bit easier. And if you haven't figured out already what I'm going to do with this, this is a real simple trick. Anybody can do it. And it's something, when you see it, if you're not doing it this way, you'll say, wow, this will save me a lot of time. Now, just as a quick example, most people have exhaust pipes. They take a rag and they polish one side. They never get in the back or around the side. And after a while, this back starts to get tarnished and rusted, or just not as polished. But if you use the belt, and I'll show this up close and personal, you can keep the whole pipe nice and clean in a very, very little amount of time. Now, it really doesn't matter. You know, I make little belts out of the little edges. These are good for getting around smaller parts. But today what I want to do, and this one's a used one, I may as well use this up. You can see it's already been used. Any kind of compound, it doesn't really matter. The mag aluminum polish is fine. Just the middle of it, up here, I'm going to be holding it so I don't need to get any on that. Now I also, just to make it easy, because sometimes this will get a twist in it, do both sides. I call this buttering. And this now becomes a tool you will find a lot of uses for you didn't think were possible. You can polish things you never can get your finger in there. This tool is a super useful tool right now. Now, for people that are really fussy, and I'm probably one of them, I'm like an old lady. I've heard that before from a lot of people. But now that you have this tool, if I sit here, and I wanted to show, if I just take, all I'm going to do is clean this area. I'm not going to clean the whole area. Now, what this is going to allow me to do, I have two choices. This will do the back, but an even better choice, just put this around a whole loop. And again, on this bike, this is one of the focal points of the bike. You really want to have, I don't want to have rusted pipes. Now, I know there's people that think, oh, it's macho if you have a rusty old crappy looking bike. Well, I don't, and that's my opinion. So I like it shiny. If I do this, I kind of call this a shoe shine, and I work my way down a pipe. It's only going to take about 30 seconds to do each pipe. The whole pipe is going to be done now. And as you look from the side, there won't be any rust or corrosion or anything. If your pipe is rusty, this works really good on titanium, by the way. Takes a little time. Titanium does polish up beautifully, though. And once it's polished, if you do this once a month, once every 2 months, you'll have a show quality bike, that's for sure. Now, from this point on, pretty easy. Now that's just one of the things that our little polishing belt is going to allow us to do. Now I'm always annoyed that I can't get my fingers back in there to polish back in there. Keep it nice and clean, keep the road salt off in the winter. This allows me to get into spots that I never could get into. Now, if you were really fussy, and I mean, I am fussy to a point, if you wanted to now, you could take a clean rag or just make a belt up that has no compound on it. And what you find out is this is a super useful little tool. Now with our smaller version, what I find out is I'm always finding something that I can use this for, that if I didn't have this, it just would make it a lot more difficult, or in some cases impossible. These little details, and I know a lot of people don't even care about this stuff. Well, if you don't, of course, it's not a big deal either. Some people don't change their underwear, let's be honest. But I like it clean, and I don't believe in that I'm a macho guy because I have a rusty motorcycle thing. I guess because I just am a macho guy. And as you work yourself around, every bike is going to be different, of course, but in this case, I like to have polished banjo fittings. Well, if you're just going to do this, let me just give an example. With a rag, you're only going to polish one little thing, and it looks terrible when you look around the corner, so to speak. It never looks polished. Well, this, in a matter of, 30, I always say 30 seconds. You don't need to go a lot more. You can do the banjo heads. And by the way, this goes over a hex surface just as well as a round surface. You never can get this part if you have polished banjo fittings. And if you just make a loop around, one loop around, there's just an endless supply of little things you can do. It makes your life easier. And what happens and it happens to me all the time, I start polishing one thing and then I say, geez, now that bolt doesn't look so nice, and all of a sudden I'm polishing everything. But the bottom line is then I don't have a rust bucket, and in this case this bike is a keeper. I will keep this bike till the day I die. One of my favorite rides, and I just like having it clean. And people that don't agree with that, well, that's fine too. Now that just polishing that's one thing. You can also extend this out. Now, sometimes the bigger one works better. These springs that go over the old classic bike the brake lines, these are really hard to get nice and clean sometimes. But again, if you know how to do this without making yourself crazy, and you don't need any power tools, you don't need anything, and it's not really important what kind of compound you use even. Use ordinary rubbing compound. That to me is worth every penny. None of these things take a long time, none of them take a lot of effort, and certainly very little money. And you change the whole look of a motorcycle. Now in this case, this is a 35, think about that, 35-year-old motorcycle. And because I've kept after it, basically since the day it was new, I try to keep it that it's almost a new motorcycle. To me, it is a new motorcycle. To me, I'm a new motorcycle. But the little maintenance I put in, and most people think I do a lot more than I really do. But what I do is I do it as efficiently as possible. And one of the things I really like, and by the way, on the 650, those are titanium pipes. They polished up beautifully. I give them the once over every once in a while with the belt. They come out looking brand new. On the R1, what I do is every time I do an oil change, or I have the fairing off for maintenance, just run that little belt over the pipes, keeps them looking nice and clean. Now another little trick you can use, you can't polish the anodized surfaces. You'll polish the anodizing off, it'll look terrible. So you take a belt like I just showed and put a little bit of simple green on it. Run it up and down, wipe it clean. It'll look brand new, and this is a 9-year-old bike, 8-year-old bike. It'll look brand new right as long as you own the bike. Now some of the things on the RD that really worked out well, I had polished the blinker stalks. When I got them, originally got the bike, they were really corroded and rusted, and that back piece that goes around holding the fender on, I've done the banjo fittings, some of the little parts on this, but every bike has parts that they really look a lot better to me when they're polished than when they're just rusty. Now I did a video years ago when I polished this engine, and I know that one's out on YouTube on my channel, but that had an incredible amount of hits. I think within a couple of months it had over 40,000 hits. Whenever I clean up the bike, especially after, I'll usually ride a couple of days and then spend some time cleaning it, I always find new uses in it. Here's just one example. When you do the valve cover on this bike by hand, really tedious. Because of the shape of the belt, I can get into a lot of areas that I normally can't get into without too much effort at all. I can get to the back. I just wanted to show a few of these. It's endless. There's endless little things you find that are either tarnished, corroded, rusted. Now, if it meant anything, if you're somebody that looks to trade bikes in every year and you keep your bike all sparkly, well, obviously you'll get top dollar for it. And a rust bucket, good luck. Now, I also tried this with minimum success. I tried at one point in time to make this a lot thicker and get in between the fins. And it didn't work as well as I thought it did, but every once in a while I have to go back and try it again. But I did want to show just another useful tool. This is an ordinary paint stick. I've shown this a million times before. Ordinary microfiber. You take the, and I put a little point on there for obvious reasons, I can get down in, especially on these older bikes that have the engine, where you see the engine as part of the motorcycle. There's always a little bit of grit, some dead bugs. Who knows what else is in there? Aliens living in your engine or something. But it allows you to get down by the spark plug, allows you to get into a lot of places in the back here. And when it gets dirty, do the same thing. Just rotate where that point is. Come up with a new spot. And again, unless you have different shape hands than I do, there's some spots in here just impossible to get to. And I think, see, it's, again, personal opinion. I think these older bikes where you can see the engine and it's clean, it's polished or original looking, or you can get in between the fins here, and you get in there pretty easy, in fact. It isn't even difficult. And what happens if you don't do this after riding for 4 or 5 or 6 years or some amount of time, then it really gets hard to clean. But if you keep after it, I guess a good analogy is it's like flushing the toilet regularly. At some point in time, you keep up with it. And if you don't do that, it's like not flushing the toilet. That's really a crude analogy, but if you keep after the cleanliness, and I've ridden this bike in a pouring rain on salty roads and God knows what else. And I've polished it and I've kept after it and I try to keep it, because it's my baby. But without the right tools, it just gets so labor intensive. With the right tools and a couple of tips, it's enjoyable. Yeah, another really useful tool, I call this, and I want to show this up close. You really can't buy this in Harbor Freight. They don't have an exact version of this. This is about a $10 tool you can buy, in my case, at Chard or at Body Shop Supply. It lasts forever, by the way. You never wear it out. Put it on the end of an electric drill. Now what this allows, if you don't have it really clean to begin with, you can run this high speed or low speed. Now the idea is, and I just want to show that as an example, the idea is to do as much as you can with the drill, but then the parts you can't get at, you can use those other two tools very effectively. I found it effective anyway. Now again, it's to me, if you have a bike where the whole engine's covered by the fairing, or you love flat black, or you don't flush the toilet, or whatever, it doesn't matter. But this I thought is a couple little tips worth sharing, because this is a part of motorcycling that I enjoy. Having a clean, a restored 35-year-old bike that looks cleaner than the day it left the factory. And I hope the tips that I've shared you can use to your advantage, or just for fun to enjoy motorcycling more. Now, just to make my point, this is basically what the engine started out looking like before I did the polishing job on it. And this is the engine now, something I've been real happy with over the years. And keeping up with the little polishing maintenance, it's a nice, enjoyable thing for me to do. Now, I always make a personal point of trying to share anything I learn, or even if whether I've invented it or not, it's irrelevant. The sharing of it is the important thing, because we all seem to have a passion for these motorcycles, especially the people who have a passion for older bikes, and especially people have a passion for older bikes that are better than the day they left the factory. That's a real passion. You know what, I'm working out in the garage today, but there's a smell coming out of the house. I have to go check it out. I'm not kidding, I could smell this out in the garage. How many thousand are we making today?
There's about 85 to 100 cookies.
85 to 100 cookies. So our next video is going to be how to buff out cookies. Oh my God. Unbelievable. A smell. I can't work outside. It's distracting to me. They look delicious. See, what we're doing, Miles is going to be coming over one day next week, or whenever today, or I don't know, and we're going to decorate them. But I'll just have to have one as a sample.
They're delicious.
So I hope the video was enjoyable, that you got to eat a few of those cookies. I'm going to go eat a couple more, in fact. And that you enjoy all the little videos we share. And of course, thanks for watching.